As a motorcycle filmmaker, I try to bring something different to my channel. When I'm riding solo, I use a tripod and a drone. Slow the pace down, try to get the most cinematic shots possible. That style works for the long solo trips because it's a reflection of the experience that I have. On other trips like my recent Baja motorcycle adventure, it's completely different. I'm riding with Eva, and we're out to have fun. For a ride like this, I want to spend the least amount of time and energy on the filmmaking, and I need a camera that works for that.
We're rolling on the new DJI Osmo Action 5.
This is the first time that I've really tried to film so much of a motorcycle trip with an action camera. And I'm really trying to push this little camera to its limits and see what it can do as a motorcycle travel camera. I want to go in the field and show you some real life, down and dirty examples. 13 days of filming under real world conditions with the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro camera. What worked, what didn't work, what mistakes I made, and what I learned. This Osmo Action 5 is so good as a helmet camera, as a vlogging camera, setting up little tripod shots. It is just fantastic. And I'll also show you how I used this camera to fix my broken motorcycle. Welcome to my review of the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro camera. I brought these two cameras to film my recent motorcycle trip in Baja. This is a $2,500 mirrorless camera. This camera costs less than $400. Which camera do you think I used the most? DJI sent me the Adventure Combo, which includes the camera, a protective frame, the magnetic quick release mount, 3 extreme batteries, multifunctional battery case, various other small parts. I also used the multifunctional charging handle. And I had an Osmo Action ND filter set. So this is the camera. It's got the same familiar form factor as the other Osmo Action cameras I've used. The screen quality is high and the menu on both screens is clear and easy to use. Right out of the box, this camera comes with several different shooting modes, including video, photo, super night, subject tracking, slow motion, time-lapse, and hyperlapse. Let's start with the video mode since that's the one I use the most. So these are the basic video settings that I use. You guys can reference them later if you need to. For all of these custom settings, I'm using an ND filter and manual exposure settings. Of course, there's a photo mode on this camera, and you can actually take photos at up to 40 megapixels, which is pretty good quality for a photo. I don't spend a lot of time riding at night, so I didn't use the super night mode for that. I did use it quite a bit when I was out wandering around the cities of Mexico at nighttime. Here's some examples from the super night mode. This is the only action camera in the industry that has a subject tracking mode. It isn't something that I really used, but it's worth pointing out. I set my camera's slow motion mode to record 4K at 120 frames per second. Moving water always looks good, like this scene at the ocean, or this shot of me jumping into the pool at the hotel. I also used it when we were at a coffee shop with an art gallery. There wasn't a lot of action in the scene, but I used camera movement to create a more dynamic portrayal of this cool place. There's a time-lapse mode that includes basic settings for clouds and sunsets. Here's a scene where we're setting up our campsite, which always looks good in a time-lapse. Same thing when I was fixing a flat tire. What I did different here is that I moved the camera around to get a bunch of different time-lapse shots, which actually ended up creating a time-lapse montage. My thought was that this would create a more interesting scene and better convey the time-consuming process of fixing a flat tire. A hyperlapse is basically a time-lapse where the camera is moving. Like time-lapse, I don't really shoot a lot of hyperlapses, but it is a mode that's offered in this camera, and I had fun playing around with it. So there's 3 main ways that I use this camera: as a helmet camera, as a vlogging camera, and as a tripod camera. I created my own custom presets based on each of these uses. When I'm in what I call riding mode, I set the field of view to ultra wide to capture more of the environment. But this little Osmo Action 5 here, wow, what a powerhouse. I can get those helmet camera shots when I'm rolling down the road, and it works really great just for vlogging, kind of like I'm doing right now. So the biggest surprise with this camera was how often I used it when I was off the motorcycle. Well, I'm out here vlogging with this little Osmo Action 5 camera, and I have to say this little camera is so easy to use. It's not just a helmet camera, but it also works great just for getting these kind of scenic beauty shots in this handheld vlogging material. DJI Osmo Action 5, loving this camera so far. For this vlog style of filmmaking, I increased the stabilization to Rocksteady Plus and used the standard lens. I wanted to make sure that these handheld shots were extra smooth. I didn't want the distortion of the wide-angle lens. I also used this Osmo Action multifunctional charging handle, and I attached a Peak Design camera plate so that I could easily use the camera on either one of my tripods. It's good when I'm in a camping environment. Maybe I want to show some food preparation or setting up camp. It has been a super versatile, fun, easy to use camera. I'm really impressed with it so far. So let's go over some of my favorite features of this camera. You can record in a normal picture profile, 10-bit, D-Log-M, and HLG. I use D-Log-M the most. It's a lower contrast video with a flat color profile, so if you want to get the highest quality out of this camera, use the D-Log-M setting, but just know that you're going to have to do a little color grading in post-production. Look at this shot here where I'm sitting inside of a cafe and it's bright just outside the door, but it's dark inside the cafe where I'm at. I think it looks pretty good. And then when I throw some color correction on it later, it looks even better. So the lens modes on this camera would go from standard lens to the ultra wide angle lens, which is 155-degree field of view. One of the new features is the internal hard drive. I actually filled up my SD card that was in the camera. I just swapped over to the built-in memory on this camera and I kept rolling. One feature to note for motorcyclists is that this camera supports pre-recording up to 5 minutes and loop recording. I do appreciate the rugged waterproof nature of this camera. There's always going to be a chance that it'll start raining and my camera will be on my helmet and it could get wet. Now, one thing to note is that this camera is only waterproof when the door to the little USB-C port here is closed. And so if you do have an external microphone attached to the camera, to your helmet, it's no longer waterproof. And I suppose it's worth pointing out that this camera does have the industry's first built-in pressure gauge. So it can show you altitude, elevation on the screen while you're recording things. The last feature I want to touch on is called timer shooting. It's perfect for capturing those early morning sunrises while I'm still lying in bed. And then when I wake up, I can see what I missed. So what are my favorite things about this camera? Some of the things that I love about this camera are size and the weight. The lighter and smaller a camera like this is, this means that you can use it without getting uncomfortable. For me, as a motorcycle travel vlogger, it has always been a dream to have a camera like this that's so minimal, small, lightweight, easy to use. All of the things that I want in a small travel camera package come with this little DJI Osmo Action 5. In fact, if this was the only camera that I had to use on a trip like this, I could probably do it. Another huge thing for me is reliability. I've had problems with other action cameras in the past. They would freeze, they would stop recording. That just has not happened to me yet with a DJI Osmo Action camera. It turns on, it starts recording with a click of a button. It just never fails to work. None of the DJI Osmo Action cameras that I've been using over the past 3 years have ever overheated on me once. And I live down here in the desert where things can get pretty hot. Battery life on this little camera is pretty phenomenal. Over 3 hours of power on this camera before it runs out of battery. Another thing I like about this camera is the quick start feature. It takes 0.3 seconds for the camera to start recording, which is awesome. I really appreciate that I can do hands-free filming with this camera. Basically anything where I really want to give you guys a first-person point of view where you literally see things through my eyes, see what I'm doing with my hands. It's easy to switch between my helmet, the vlog handle, or the tripod with the magnetic mount. And it's also really easy for other people to use this camera. I can just turn it on and hit the record button and just say, here, film this, point it in the right direction. I did that one time when I was down at the beach with Eva. She just grabbed the action camera, started rolling, got some cool shots of me using my Fuji camera, and I got some cool shots of the guys and their fishing boats, and it was just so smooth. One of the things that I love about it the most. Another advantage to a little camera like this is that it's so inconspicuous and easy to use in public. This little camera is going to be a lot less intimidating than this big camera. People don't even notice it. It's just so small. Makes it really really fun to use.
Ultimately, I feel like this is the kind of camera that makes it easier for me to stay in the moment. As motorcyclists, most of the memories that we have on trips like these are when we're off the motorcycle. And a trip like this is just made up of so many of those small moments. So now I want to talk about audio. But let's start out with helmet camera audio first and foremost. You can use the camera's built-in microphone, but it's not going to sound very good.
Do you want me to lead now?
Yeah, you take over.
Okay.
Here's an example when we're going at low speed and you can start to hear some of the wind noise. Once we get up to a higher speed, the wind noise makes the audio practically unusable. So your first option, I would say, to get better helmet camera audio would be to use something like this. This is what's called a wind slayer, but there's an even better way to go, especially if you want to record your own voice. This is my helmet mount of choice, and I'll attach the microphone right inside here to the back. I don't have to have a microphone permanently attached. I don't have to have cables running around inside my helmet or a cable coming out of my helmet. And I'll get really good quality audio of my voice when I'm going down the road.
Now we're riding down in the midst of this oasis.
Biggest thing that I want to talk about when it comes to really getting good audio from the DJI camera is the DJI wireless mic.
Now this is what the DJI wireless mic sounds like. Okay, now I'm about 100 feet away from the camera and I'm talking on the little wireless microphone. Super easy.
I haven't yet tried using it inside of my helmet. Once I get that figured out, you can bet I'm going to be using this inside of my helmet to see how that works. What I have done in the field, mount it to my backpack. I was able to record really good sounds of my motorcycle.
Very versatile to be able to use the DJI mic with the DJI Osmo Action 5 camera.
So these are some of the pitfalls and gotchas that I experienced with this camera. I forgot to turn the camera off. This is what I call an unintentional time lapse. I broke an ND filter while it was attached to the camera. Maybe that actually prevented the camera lens from getting damaged, so it could be a positive thing. Here's a shot where I forgot to use image stabilization. Fortunately, I remembered to turn it on and I redid that shot. This is what I call a bad helmet cam angle. I got burned a few times by the minimum focus distance on this camera. Usually it had something to do with food. Here's a case where I forgot to put on an ND filter. Here's a case where I forgot to remove an ND filter. Now this camera does have the ability to shoot vertical video, and there were several times where I accidentally started recording when the camera was turned sideways and all of that footage ended up vertical. And then later I realized there's this thing called orientation lock, and I could just turn that on and that wouldn't happen. Now there were a few times when I tried to mount the action camera to my motorcycle, and I think I should have had a much faster shutter speed to get good stabilization. And here's an example of a bad audio cable connection going to the lavalier mic inside my helmet. So that's one more reason to use something like the DJI wireless microphone.
I put it in gear and it just stalls.
And so here's the part of the video that you've been waiting for. How did I actually fix my broken motorcycle with an action camera?
Kickstand switch. I can't get the magnet to trigger the kickstand switch sensor.
And I've heard stories of people in search of magnets to make a repair in the field. I have magnetic mount on this action camera. Let's try that and see if it works.
So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna tape this little DJI helmet cam magnet mount to the kickstand switch sensor, and Sterling should be good to go.
We actually used the DJI magnetic mount to fix my motorcycle.
DJI magnetic mount for the win.
That's what got me back on the road, and I was able to ride all the way home with that part attached to my motorcycle, where it's still attached to the motorcycle at the dealership right now as they're fixing it. Well, there you go. That is my review of the DJI Osmo Action 5 camera that ended up being a lot more than just a helmet camera or an action camera. It was the camera that I used to film myself talking and tell the story of our Baja motorcycle adventure. When I got back home and analyzed all of my footage on the computer, I saw that I had recorded 19 and a half hours of total footage, and 12 hours of that footage came from this camera. So the numbers speak for themselves. This was a very powerful camera for me to use, but more than that, it was enjoyable, it was fun, and it really helped me stay in the moment and capture life's little moments.
I have really enjoyed using this DJI Osmo Action 5 camera. I'm going to continue to use it in all of my future videos. I hope that you guys have learned something about how I use action cameras and why I'm using the DJI Osmo Action 5 camera. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.